Life as we know it has changed irrevocably, and that in this seismic shift lies an opportunity to turn things around, improve our world, and make life better for the majority, especially in poor countries. It is time to reboot Nigeria. This is Pivotal. Out of 82 million registered voters in Nigeria, only about 28 million were at the polls in the last presidential election. The fate of over 200 million people was decided by just about 18% of Nigeria's registered voters. As if this is not bad enough, of those who came out to vote, about 3 million had their votes nullified. The situation is not any better for subnational elections. In Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, for instance, of the 6.5 million registered voters, only about 1.1 went to the polls to elect the state's governor. Since the return to democracy in 1999, Nigeria's elections have been plagued by voter apathy and a myriad of other problems. According to civil society and international observers, these include discrepancies in records, lack of clear checks and balances, insufficient voter education and information about the electoral process, and even a lack of skills among electoral officials, all of which experts say undermine confidence in the integrity of elections. Many argue that the electoral process can be improved by the Electoral Act 2018 Amendment Bill, which the President has denied access to 4 times. While this may fix some of the systematic issues identified with the electoral process, there are also now growing concerns about insecurity across the country and the coordinated attacks on Inec offices in parts of the South-South and the Southeast of the country. With less than 2 years to another national election, and with 3 states going to the polls starting from November, how do we ensure improved elections in a way that promotes the integrity of the whole process and deepens our democracy? On today's edition of Pivotal, I'm joined by Mr. Festus Okoye, a National Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission (Inec) and Chairman of the Information and Voter Education Committee, and Mr. Anthony Ihilebo, a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to Pivotal.
Thank you for having us.
If I could start with you, what is Inec doing differently that would ensure that the elections we have coming up, starting with the elections in Anambra, followed by Ekiti and Osun, and then of course the national elections in 2023, would be improved and a much better quality than what we've seen in the past?
Immediately after the 2019 general election, the Commission compiled a report of that particular election. We also had a stakeholders engagement, even beginning with our own staff, in relation to what we did right and what we didn't do right. So we have learned valuable lessons from some of the challenges we had with the 2019 election. And not only that, if you recall, the last polling units in Nigeria were created in 1996. And we had a total of 119,974 polling units. As at the time these polling units were created, Nigeria had a total registered voter population of 50 million. Nigeria went into the 2019 general election with a total registered voter population of 84 million and with the same number of polling units. And so what this commission has done is to create an additional 56,872 units and added to the existing polling units. So as of today, we have a total of 176,846 polling units. This will decongest the existing polling units, make for better election, and also we have also taken some of these newly created polls closer to the people that need it, so that on election days, pregnant women, nursing mothers, and the rest of them, and persons with disability can have access to polling units that are closer to them. So that's one of the things we have done. Secondly, we have started the continuous voters registration exercise, and we have created an online portal through which people who are internet savvy can register online, thereby decongesting what happens at the registration centers. And we believe that we have deepened the use of technology in the electoral process. And more fundamentally, what we now do is that we now upload polling unit results into a central viewing portal through which Nigerians can see what goes on at the various polling units in terms of result generation, even before they get to the collation centers. And so we have learned valuable lessons, and we are also moving our electoral process towards a different direction, a direction where we build an institution, and a direction where human interface will be less in an electoral process, and the technology will be the dominant feature of our electoral process.
Mr. Hilebo, I mean, those obviously are significant steps. The fact that, for example, people can register to vote online, the fact that there are more polling units, the fact that they have brought polling units closer to the people. Are these, in your view, sufficient to lead to a drastic and significant improvement in the election process, or are there other significant issues that you feel haven't been dealt with and which must be dealt with?
Well, first of all, I must commend Inec and it's the National Electoral Commission, Mr. Okoye, for the innovations they have introduced into the system. However, I'll hold back a little, because until we've seen the implementation of these actual innovations in practice, maybe during an election, we will be able to test some of these things towards the 20 Anambra elections. Let's see how feasible it is. I would say that we'll hold one hand up, like the chicken that goes into a new place and a new territory. It still has one leg to observe how well Inec performs in deploying this. However, I must also continue with this commendation. But in addition to this, we still will have voter apathy arising from other non-Inec related issues, perhaps the judgments that people see coming out of the courts when they feel that they have exercised their franchise and this franchise is not respected. And not just that it's not respected, it's also the perception. Sometimes the courts, when they give such judgments, have their reasons. And the court doesn't have a system to communicate the reason for its reasons or its reason for its judgments. Some case in point will be Imo. Whatever the Supreme Court decided at that point, people in Imo, I can tell you at least, INEC has lost at least 20-30% of its expected voter turnout, because people will feel that their right to suffrage will not be, franchise will not be respected. However, the innovations INEC has, and the most important one is the polling unit coalition that you can see we tried it out in Edo State. It works very well for us. In Edo State, before 12:30, while INEC was collating and sending polling unit results, we were able to tell where we were in the election. Same thing with Ondo State. With the results that were trickling by, this was much earlier than Edo, because we had understood the system and interacted with it. So by, say, 6-7 p.m., we already knew where the election was going. And this has helped to curb a lot of post-election drama that happens at the ward collation and at the local government collation and perhaps the senatorial collation, because these are the places where in time past, people have been able to interfere and manipulate results. So INEC has taken care of just this particular issue. But what I would want them to do is go one step further by making sure this is implemented in the new electoral acts that we're expecting the National Assembly to sign.
Let me bring in Mr. Okoye here. Mr. Okoye, there is no doubt that there are things outside the control of INEC that have a bearing on your ability to carry out your job properly. Let me start by asking you, how significant is your view, is the new Electoral Act? And what would it mean for the work that you're doing if we go to the 2023 elections without a new bill?
As a commission, we operate on the basis of the existing legal framework. The task of lawmaking resides with the National Assembly, and the business of assenting to a bill that has been worked on by the National Assembly resides with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in this new electoral framework that is being packaged, the commission was carried along right from the beginning. In fact, I chaired the Joint National Assembly Technical Committee on the electoral framework. And there are significant innovations in this bill that is being worked on. One of the issues in the bill relates to giving the commission the leeway to assess some of the funds it needs for an election at least 2 years before an election in an instrumental basis. And so that by the time we are getting to an election period, what will be remaining will just be a little fund for the payment of ad hoc staff.
How much of an impact has the lack of funds had on your ability to conduct elections properly? The fact that you sort of get funds like last minute instead of staggered throughout the period between the last elections and the next elections?
Yeah, it has a very significant impact because you cannot plan and plan properly if you do not know when the funds will come. Some of the facilities we use produced in Nigeria, some of them, like the smart card reader, you have to place an order at least a year and a half before an election so that they can be produced. And if you don't have money at hand, there is no way you can plan properly.
Mr. Hilebo, given the fact that there seems to be a general consensus that Nigeria does need the tweaking of its electoral act, why is it, in your view, taking so long? And why has it not been a straightforward route for the president to actually just assent to the bill that has been put in front of him 4 times, I understand?
Well, it boils down to political interest. If you ask me, towards the 2019 election, his election was at stake, and if that act had been signed by him, perhaps we would have had a new president. But be that as it may, it's in the past. We'd expect that he's right now thinking of what legacy is he going to leave as the president, being a beneficiary of an election that saw an incumbent handing over to the opposition party in an election conducted that seemed to be fair at scrutiny. That being the case, that being said, would also be one would be curious as to why the National Assembly has consistently shifted the dates and promises it has made. I mean, this is a National Assembly that said before June would have a bill that will be sent to the president. Where at the end of June now, there's no hope for that bill. We still have people having to go to the National Assembly and go and protest. There's a young man there, Atoya Rio, that's constantly at the National Assembly trying to get.
What are the dangers in your view, Mr. Hilebo, if we go to the polls with the old law?
Well, if you remember the 2 elections we had, off-cycle elections, that really prompted a lot of people into an advocacy to get certain things looked at in the Electoral Act, Bayelsa and Kogi. If you remember the high incidences of violence in these states, you'll see that anybody that wants to or cares about every single life in Nigeria would want to see laws promulgated that would mitigate the loss of lives. For instance, making statutory giving statutory backing to such innovative ideas such as the polling unit results being done, because no matter what you get from the polling units, as seen on the Inec server, we'll know that it's merely a policy. What we'd like to see is where it becomes an act. And several times cases have gone all the way to the Supreme Court. But because the Electoral Act does not recognize the card reader, you see, for instance, card reader data is not a prerequisite for any judgment that is being given, whereas it's a critical factor in the elections. But just because it has no legal backing by any of the acts, you see that data from it may not even be seen as a prerequisite for any judgment at all in deciding the fate of elections. It's not only just about enhancing the integrity, it's also creating a perception of that people are going to have free, fair, and credible elections. And then, legitimacy of government. It's a very important, something that we tend to overlook. But where you have a high voter turnout, the government seems to want to stand on a very firm legitimacy push. It feels that it has gotten the mandate of the people in such a manner that there's a huge turnout. You can record it at the percentage of turnout. But where the perception is that their votes will not count, then you'll begin to see that people will not even turn out for the election, where you have 20-30% voter turnout. But right now, I'm seeing a drive for people to collect their PVCs or register for their PVCs. It's very high. There's a huge indication that a lot more people will register this time to vote and take their destiny into their hands. But let's just hope that we have the necessary legal framework to back all this zeal that you see in people, and thereby give whatever government comes in after the Electoral Act is amended some sort of sovereign legitimacy.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we focus a little bit on the issue of insecurity and what, if any, impact it will have on elections that are coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back to Pivotal, where we're talking elections and Inec with Inec Commissioner Festus Okoye and also lawyer and public analyst Anthony Ehilebo. Mr. Okoye, if I can come back to you, how concerned are you about the rising spate of insecurity across all of Nigeria in terms of the impact it is going to have on your ability to conduct elections across the country?
Yeah, we are really concerned about the rising spate of insecurity in the country. For instance, if you recall, in 2019, we had 9 incidents in 4 states of the Federation involving our offices and involving our personnel. Now, in the year 2020, we had 21 incidents in 9 states of the Federation involving our Inec offices and also involving some of our personnel. Then in the year 2021, we had a total of 12 incidents in 7 states of the Federation. So these incidents have a significant impact in our ability to conduct elections. In some of the places, our local government offices were burnt. In some of the places, our local government offices were vandalized. In some of the places, our state offices were burnt and vandalized. In some of our generators were burnt, collation offices, collation centers were burnt, and utility vehicles were burnt. So these incidents have created an atmosphere of fear and anxiety on the part of some of our staff.
How confident are you that you will recover in time for elections, starting with the one in Anambra, then you've got Ekiti, you've got Oshun before we go into national elections in 2023?
Well, for Anambra, we don't have a choice than to recover. Despite the fact that we had delivered 50% of the non-sensitive materials required for the conduct of the Anambra governorship elections that was burnt during this particular crisis. We are moving a new set of materials back to Anambra. We are trying to rebuild our collation center, and we are replacing the generators from the contiguous states. So we are going to recover on time for the conduct of the Anambra governorship election. But recovering is one thing, but generating the necessary confidence to get people, to get ad hoc staff to go and conduct this election is a different thing altogether. And that's why we are consulting with the stakeholders and also organizing confidence building initiatives, especially at the local government levels, to make sure that people have sufficient trust and confidence in the ability of the commission to conduct the elections.
Mr. Ehilebo, INEC is preparing to sort of deal with the challenges of rebuilding perhaps infrastructure that has been destroyed, but the core job of providing security rests not with INEC, but with other security services. And given the fact that in the past, militarization of elections has been an issue, we're now staring at a paradox where perhaps in order to secure elections, you may actually have to use a number of security forces, police, the military, etc. But on the other hand, we've always been concerned about what their presence during elections actually means to the electoral process. So Tony, how do we deal with this paradox?
I know that the situation, especially in the Southeast, sort of tanked in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But within the last 10 days, we've seen a restoration of order so to speak, in the Southeast. And I hope that they stay the course in terms of the current security arrangements in the Southeast in such a manner that they're able to continue onwards towards the period of the election. Of course, elections brings about its own unique challenges as per security. But I do have a lot of confidence that, again, with the cooperation of the security agencies involved and with the stakeholders, knowing that they need a state that is security rank-free to also chip in whatever way to make sure that that election has the security it needs. Security is a function of those that are also involved. So it's not just the security agencies, it's also the actors who are going to participate in this election.
Mr. Festus Okoye, I know that this is not strictly your remit, providing security for elections, but providing security for one election, let's say the one coming up in November in Anambra, is one thing, but trying to secure the whole country during elections, even in the best of times, tends to be problematic. But when you now add, for example, the large sway of influence that bandits have, for example, in the Northwest, the continuous fight against Boko Haram in the Northeast, and of course, these more recent troubles in the Southeast, it sounds like the security forces are going to have their hands full. How confident are you that you will get the necessary support you need in order to enable people come out confidently to vote without fears of getting kidnapped or assaulted or beaten up in 2023?
I completely agree with you that as we move towards the 2023 election, that things are going to become more difficult. But we have what we call the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, made up of all the security agencies in Nigeria. And anytime we have a meeting, the top echelon of the security agencies attend the meeting. We have even added the EFCC to the meeting and the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to our meetings. And so we continue to interface with them and liaise with them. And then whatever tips we have in relation to the conduct of elections in terms of security issues, we make it available to them. And also, we also depend on them to also give us information on the things we need to take care of before, during, and after an election. And so we continue to work with them. But I agree, the security challenges are enormous. There are places, no doubt, that we can hardly get to. But we have resident electoral commissioners in all the states of the Federation, and we have electoral officers, and we analyze the configuration and security situation in each local government at every given time, and then make a determination on whether we can deploy to a particular local government or not. And if we are unable to deploy, we design strategies and mechanisms of getting people to vote in those areas.
Mr. Hilebo, what are your final thoughts regarding what is required for us to sort of begin, as we begin the countdown to national elections in 2023, what are the things that are required to ensure that we end up with elections that have integrity, that reinforce our democracy, deepen it, but also that help with the legitimacy of the process and those elected using that process?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say that this innovative ideas enumerated by the National Commissioner are very good, fantastic ideas. For us to see a better election with more legitimacy, we'd like to see them implemented to the fullest. We'd like to see a drive to get more stakeholder buy-in, stakeholders being not just necessarily political parties, but Nigerians. So he's in charge of voter education. We'd like to see voters a lot more work done in terms of educating voters on the legitimacy of franchise, the necessity of civic responsibility to go out and vote. I don't think that enough work is being done. They're doing what is within their means, but they can do a lot more to make a lot more citizens more aware of the civic responsibility to go out and vote on election day. Register vote. Most people that are registering right now with Inec are doing that so they can get the ID card as an ID, not necessarily to use it in exercise of a franchise. So
yeah, because I mean, even those that are
that
already voted, from the data we have, don't necessarily always come out to vote. So registering people is not necessarily an indicator that you're going to get more people at the polls based on the data we have.
That's my point exactly. that's my point exactly. We would like to see more animated conversations, animated communication that seeks to explain. I know this is more a responsibility for the NOA, but I mean, creating this communication package should come from INEC because they understand the implications of their job.
Mr. Okoye, what is INEC's promise to Nigerians, not just for the national elections coming up in 2023, but the Anambra elections, the Ekiti elections, and I think is Ekiti and Oshun, I think that's also coming up. What is INEC's promise to Nigerians when it comes to all elections that we have coming up?
Our promise to the Nigerian people is that as a commission, we will continue to improve with every election. We learn valuable lessons from every election. We are not puritanical in this commission. We take advice from stakeholders. We learn lessons from every election that we conduct. We will continue to innovate. We will continue to be creative in terms of bringing our electoral process up to speed with modern realities. We will continue to deepen the use of technology in the electoral process and reduce as much as possible human interface in the electoral process. So our promise is that this commission has the courage and has the presence of mind to do the right things. And we plead with Nigerians to keep on supporting this commission, that we will not disappoint them.
And that's it for this edition of Pivotal, where we were talking about elections with INEC Commissioner Festus Okoye and lawyer and public analyst Anthony Hilebo. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And we'll be back again next month with another edition of Pivotal. Until then, have a wonderful month. Goodbye.